did I, Sam? Did I mock voters who were worried about Project 2025? Because I don't remember doing that. What I do recall is chastising Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party for offering nothing to voters other than incessant fear-mongering about Trump. I also remember criticizing members of the media who simply regurgitated anything the Democratic Party claimed.
The ongoing feud between Ana Kasparian and Emma Vigeland and Sam Seder of the Majority Report continues. Emma Vigeland and Sam Seder recently critiqued Ana Kasparian for what they say is being wrong about Project 2025. And now Ana Kasparian has responded. We're going to take a look at clips from the Majority Report as well as the Young Turks with Ana Kasparian. I have my thoughts on this as well. Let's check this out together.
Last week, Emma Vigeland and Sam Seder of the Majority Report thought it would be fun to put out a more than 18-minute long video chastising and mocking me for my willingness to admit that I was wrong, in part for downplaying the possibility of Donald Trump implementing Project 2025 upon winning the election.
People have admitted that they made a mistake.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Ana with you guys. More news.
So I just want to address something. I was wrong about Project 2025. MAGA hates Project 2025, and I thought that Donald Trump actually cared about his base because in his first term, he seemed to be swayed by his base. He seemed to listen to his base.
Wait a second, wait. MAGA hates Project 2025?
Where's the evidence of that?
What? What is this MAGA that they speak of?
You know what? Sam is totally right. It is he who understands the MAGA base better than anyone else. I mean, the guy goes out of his way to engage in dialogue with Trump voters. He seeks to understand where their hearts and minds are at. Here he is touting his openness to understanding people who vote differently than he does.
We can't take the power back without talking to Trump voters and making them realize their mistake. Well, wait.
So let's pander to them first.
Pick your battles doesn't have anything to do with talking to Trump voters.
Yeah.
Or not.
Or flattering false
consciousness. You've just decided to make some weird connection there. Yeah. We can't take the power back without talking to Trump voters and making them realize their mistake. Actually, no, we can't. There's millions and millions of other people who need to be motivated to get into the fight.
Is that I am coming from the Polymarket Studios?
Insulting them and lumping them all together as the worst among them doesn't help either. I don't know when we have done that with all 78 million people, but I got news for you. The percentage of those who voted for Mitt Romney, they can suck my. I don't care about any of that. I don't care about any of that.
Astute analysis, there you have it. Sam Seder, noted expert on Trump voters who he won't talk to and has no interest in understanding. Got it. But it's worth asking why Trump would repeatedly deny supporting Project 2025 on the campaign trail. Was it to appeal to libs like Sam Seder? Or maybe it's because he knew his base doesn't support large swaths of the policy agenda laid out in the project's 900-page document. So to say that Trump is implementing Project 2025 isn't even fully accurate because, well, there's a lot that he doesn't agree with that's in that document and said that he won't actually pursue. After getting elected, he said these things. For example, Project 2025 wants to eliminate every single tax bracket and replace it with just two brackets, 15% for anyone making under $168,000 annually and 30% for those earning more than that. If this is the first time you're hearing about it, it's because Trump hasn't mentioned it and isn't likely to pursue it. And are we gonna pretend like Trump read a 900-page document? Really? He does, however, plan to extend his 2017 tax cuts for individual filers. Trump also wants to lower the corporate tax rate from 21% to 15%, which I've spoken out against repeatedly. Project 2025 also proposes cuts to Medicaid. What does Trump have to say about that?
Social Security won't be touched, other than if there's fraud or something, we're gonna find it's gonna be strengthened, but won't be touched. Medicare, Medicaid, none of that stuff is gonna be touched.
Nothing.
You don't have to. Now, if there are illegal migrants in the system, we're gonna get them out of the system and all of that fraud, but it's not gonna be touched.
I mean, well, look, touching Medicare or Medicaid, super unpopular. And maybe Trump is just saying that publicly while behind closed doors, he's telling Republicans who are currently working on a budget that they should totally slash Medicaid, right? Well, it turns out, no, wrong. That's not what's happening. Trump had previously weighed in privately against cutting too heavily into Medicaid, telling House Republicans at a closed door meeting earlier this month that he wants to be very careful with Medicaid. His public remarks on Hannity represented a broader and more forceful assertion of that red line. Nonetheless, Trump's agenda and Project 2025 do have a great deal of overlap, especially in regard to the dismantling of the administrative state, which his base actually does like. But how? How could anyone be in favor of scaling back on government agencies that are full to the brim with unelected career bureaucrats who get to create, judge, and enforce their own policies and rules? How could this be?
A scathing review of the CDC, finding the agency repeatedly botched its pandemic response and failed to meet the moment of crisis. The CDC long under fire for its guidance on masking and vaccines over the last 2 years.
This is really confusing.
There are more than 10,000 chemicals and additives allowed in food in the U.S., often in small amounts, but many have not been evaluated by the FDA in decades. The majority are safe, but some chemicals allowed here have been banned overseas after research has linked them to cancer and developmental or behavioral issues.
Is the food industry basically policing itself?
I would say yes. 45% of the FDA's overall budget now comes from the companies it's reviewing, and 65% of the FDA's budget specifically for human drug regulation comes directly from Big Pharma itself.
The historic $2 billion payout by the U.S. Department of Agriculture to black farmers and other farmers of color who experienced discrimination when applying to the USDA's farm loan programs.
The lender, who was a federal employee who was employed by a government, spat on me. I was called the N-word from this same official.
So I do a lot of work surrounding environmental justice issues here locally as far as activism goes. And I've done research fellow at the local EPA. The admin at the time when I was a research fellow were primarily comprised of people who were affiliated or directly coming from the Department of Defense. And they put in a lot of restrictions as to like what the researchers get to, which PFAS compound the researchers get to study.
Right.
Is the EPA turning a blind eye to these dangerous forever chemicals, and why?
Unfortunately, the EPA is not turning off the tap of these chemicals from the polluters who knew they were poisoning their workers in the 60s and their neighbors in the 70s and ultimately all of us. And they're continuing to allow these polluters to send their PFAS wastes not only into our rivers, but to our wastewater treatment plants where then they are then sold to farmers who unknowingly contaminate their fields.
Whoopsies.
So before Anna gets into the next part, I'd like to say here, first of all, I don't think there's anyone who thinks that there aren't problems with our government and with our government agencies and there's not waste and fraud and abuse and all of that the Trump administration is constantly talking about that can't be reined in or handled in some way. I don't think there's anybody saying that. But two things. In terms of Trump, with Ana Kasparian saying that, he doesn't want to cut Medicaid and all of that, we know that Trump is a pathological liar. So are we going to trust anything that Donald Trump says? So that would be the first thing. The second thing is, in terms of Emma Vigeland and Sam Seder not wanting to reach out to MAGA and Republicans and to try to understand them. First of all, this reaching out to MAGA and Republicans is what is destroying the Young Turks' viewership. So I don't know why Ana Kasparian would want to double down on that when they're losing views, they're hemorrhaging viewers, people don't like them anymore, people on the left. So that is a big aspect of this that I would think she would be wanting to back off on. But also, this is one of the big criticisms of the Democratic Party, and I think even a criticism that TYT has had is that the Democratic Party seems to be much more interested in some mythical Republican out there that might vote for them rather than appealing to their own base. So again, I don't see this as a winning argument for Ana Kasparian.
Now, if you watch Beavis and Butthead on the Vanguard YouTube channel, which the Majority Report hilariously treats as some authoritative source, you'd think that TYT is totally in favor of the Trump administration gutting federal agencies. Except we're not. Two things can be true at the same time. These agencies have been deeply corrupted, do engage in waste, and should be reformed. But treating the federal workforce as if they're Twitter employees is a disastrous way to handle it, as we've been learning in recent weeks. But let's hear what Emma has to say about my on-air correction.
It is not the prediction. People make predictions all the time.
Right, I was wrong in my prediction about the election, but
this is not making some type of poly market bet here.
Yeah.
Where the outcome we can't tell.
Yeah.
There was abundance amount of evidence of this, and even if your opinion, not prediction, opinion was, I can't see them doing this. This is pretty radical. The idea that you would mock people for believing it and saying it was a conspiracy theory. The people had Trump derangement syndrome. I'm sorry. Give me a break.
Apologies, I forget that Sam usually doesn't let Emma get a word in edgewise, but I'll address what she said in that video in a second.
That's nonsense with that Sam Seder doesn't let Emma Vigeland talk. I mean, this is, anybody that watches this show knows that that's just bullshit on Ana Kasparian's part.
Second, but before I do, did I mock voters who were worried about Project 2025? Because I don't remember doing that. What I do recall is chastising Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party for offering nothing to voters other than incessant fear-mongering about Trump. I also remember criticizing members of the media who simply regurgitated anything the Democratic Party claimed. I also found it fascinating that as the whole of the Democratic Party was engaging in said fear-mongering, they were also playing part in a massive cover-up about Biden's mental decline. I mean, just think about it. Democracy is under threat. We, the Democrats, insist that this corpse stay in the race to give us the best chance of beating Trump and saving democracy. But since Emma brought it up, let's address the fact that inaccurate predictions are totally okay, but only when she's wrong. In the lead up to the presidential race, Emma declared that her final electoral college prediction is that Harris sweeps all 7 swing states and ekes out a victory in Iowa. My only reservation is that I don't want to jinx the results, but I'm trying to avoid the trappings of magical thinking. Well, Emma, the magical thinking is what led you to think that Harris would sweep all battleground states. Not that you cited superstitious jinxing. And of course, Trump, not Harris, went on to win all swing states and the popular vote. The average of polls clearly showed Harris trailing Trump. She ran a horrific campaign, stood for nothing, was unpopular with anyone who was paying attention, and wasn't even nominated through a democratic process. She was anointed. How's that for saving democracy?
So I would agree with some of what Ana Kasparian is saying and disagree with some of what she is saying. The Democrats ran a poor campaign. I would agree with that. And also, they definitely covered up for Joe Biden, and it should have been, they should have sat Joe Biden down 2 years into his presidency and said, you're running, this is one term, you're not running again. We're going to have an actual open primary. That's the way this should have been handled. So it was pretty much a disaster all the way around. And I agree with Ana Kasparian on that. In terms of Emma or anyone else's prediction about the election, I would say there's a difference between predicting what voters are going to do and predicting what an administration is going to do. We didn't know exactly how the election was going to go, but we had a really good idea that if Donald Trump got reelected, that Project 2025 was going to be a major part of that. Now, Ana Kasparian is trying to parse, saying that, well, you know, Donald Trump supports some things of Project 2025 and doesn't support other things. That doesn't mean that he doesn't overall support Project 2025, and maybe that Project 2025 and the people who put it into place aren't really in charge of everything. You know, when Trump is signing all of these executive orders and he's sitting there in the chair and they're saying this is an executive order to, you know, say trans people will be shot on sight or whatever, and then Donald Trump signs off on it, he always looks like he's never seen it before. So I can't imagine that anybody with a half of a brain is thinking that Donald Trump is actually writing all of these executive orders. That's coming from Project 2025 and other areas. So I think comparing these two predictions, predicting the election and predicting what Donald Trump was going to do, those are two very different things in my mind. But let me know in the comments, what do you think about all of this with this ongoing feud? Do you agree with Ana Kasparian, right? Do you think she's right with what she's saying? Do you agree with Emma Vigeland and Sam Seder? One last thing that I'd want to add in, I've said this on other videos, but Ana Kasparian talks about the Vanguard, which, you know, they're gaining steam, but they have a tiny audience compared to the Young Turks. This is one of the things that I don't understand about her and Cenk, is they let all of these people get under their skin who have smaller audiences than them. And they get on, you know, get into Twitter battles with people. And I just don't understand that mentality. They just seem to be very thin-skinned. I don't know why they wouldn't just ignore most of this and just continue on with what they're doing. But I guess it's because they're feeling the heat so much because they're losing viewership. But let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure to give me a like and subscribe. This is Chris on Culture. I will see you in the next video.